welcome again to another episode of the Real Estate Insights Conversations with Industry Leaders. And today I am super excited to have Wally Bressler with us. Wally is a renowned figure in the field of real estate and sales coaching. With over 25 years of experience in real estate, he has transitioned from a successful real estate agent / broker to a highly sought after coach. Bressler is the founder of the Trigger Sales System, a program designed to enhance sales skills, particularly in phone sales, and to address emotional blocks and reluctance in selling, which I think we all have to deal with. He has conducted more than 40,000 coaching calls and training sessions since 2021, demonstrating his extensive expertise in the field. Additionally, Wally Bressler is a best-selling author known for his book, Tragic Hero, Picking Up the Pieces, and is recognized for his contributions as a life and business coach, speaker, phone sales experience. So Wally, thank you for being here this morning. Yes. And welcome. I really appreciate you being willing to come on here and spend some time with me today.
Honored to be here. Thanks for making some time, or should I say, give me an opportunity to join you here today.
Well, this is great, and I'm super excited, and I think we'll do our best to just kind of keep things flowing. I've got some specific questions I'd like to ask, but we'll see where it goes. If we want to elaborate on some of these things, by all means, feel free. So,
all yours.
So let's start off with your career journey. So you've been in the business for a long time, quite as long as you, but I'm getting that feeling. I'm in my 20th year, and so I understand that the journey is a bit of a wild ride. Can you share your journey from being a real estate agent to becoming a renowned sales coach and author?
Yeah, wow. Okay, great. I graduated from college in 1990. It was the first Gulf War. We were in the midst of a double dip recession. So I think back then it was the second worst year to get a job since World War II. It was pretty bad. I was like, geez, what am I going to do? So I ended up, my mom worked at the local high school. She was a foreign language coordinator. So I got a job substitute teaching. Then I worked as a janitor, lived at home. And then I got a job in the mutual fund industry in 91. I did that for from 91 to 98. And in 98, I was like, I'm just sick of corporate America. And so I ended up getting my license in 98. Fortunately, I got connected with the right people and ended up selling 72 houses my first 14 months in the industry. And then I helped as a sales manager for the organization I was working for. And then, in 2001, I got the opportunity to start doing some training and coaching. And then ended up doing training and coaching full time since 2006. So it's been, like you said, it's been a wild ride. And, coaching and working with agents during the Great Recession was definitely a monstrous learning experience for me.
Yeah, I remember those days of the Great Recession. That's
about it.
Yeah, a lot of us needed a lot of help back then. So what inspired you to create the Trigger Sales System, and how does it differ from traditional sales methods?
I used to sit with my clients and we'd get on the phone and they would be like, hey, I go, how did your prospecting go this week? They're like, I didn't do any. I'm like, how come? They're like, well, I had all these other things to do. I said, yeah, but you have to prospect to continue growing your business. And we get on the phone again. I said, listen, I'm going to stop taking your money because you're not doing what I'm asking you to do. And your business isn't going to grow if you don't start making phone calls and doing what you need to do. So anyway, I went through some pretty traumatic stuff younger in life and kind of all came to a head in 2019, in doing work on myself to become the best version of myself that I could be. I started learning about what causes, low self-esteem, low self-worth, procrastination, perfectionism, because I suffered from all that. And I was able to connect it to people's either inability or lack of desire to get on the phone. One of my clients, Brian O'Neill, my first client, when I started working with him down in, he's in Greenville, South Carolina. He's actually with EXP. He's been an Icon agent 3 years in a row now, which is awesome for him. And it was interesting because I said, okay, and we put his plan together. He was all set, ready to go. I'm like, okay, time to make calls. He goes, no, I don't prospect. Hey, what do you mean you don't prospect? He goes, I don't like the phone. I'm like, nothing to like about it. All right. It's the phone. And so I'm like, I said, well, let's work on this. And I started working with him and giving him some strategies and helping him out. And then about 45 days later, he called me and says, hey, I just picked up a FSBO listing for $500,000. I'm like, oh. Like, where'd you get that? He says, I was prospecting. I said, what? He goes, yeah. And I'm picking up the phone. He says, the guy's got another house to sell too. I'm like, no kidding. And so I was like, wow. So I started formulating the program a little bit more specifically. And it was working. And so now I hold regular classes. It's an 8-week course, and basically takes people through what they need to do in order to overcome the challenges they're having that are preventing them from, picking up the phone and making a phone call, or advancing a call through an objection, or getting in front of a video camera, or getting paperwork signed, or a lot of people have trouble with asking for the order, and asking for money, negotiating fees. So it's all connected there. And it's really not sales training at all. I mean, the end of the course, the last session is on how to, be excellent on the phone and what it takes to, prospect and build a pipeline on the phone. But it has zero to do with sales and everything to do with becoming the person you need to be in order to make sales happen.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense, and I totally get it because even 20 years in the business, I still suffer from sales reluctance or call reluctance. I go to pick up the phone and I hear all the excuses in my head. Oh, it's lunchtime, so maybe it's not a good time to call, or maybe
Mhm.
it's too early in the morning, and it's like, Paul, just shut up, make the
Mhm.
calls. And when
Yeah.
you get into that habit of making the calls, it actually feels good when you complete it and you get 20, 25, 30 calls done in a couple hours, and you're like, wow, okay, sense of accomplishment. I've had a few conversations, maybe set an appointment or two.
Yep. Mhm.
And then it's like, okay, you actually start looking forward to doing that the
Mhm.
next day. So
You know,
people really need that.
and I appreciate that distinction on your part. I've kind of learned, at least from my, I can see there's two types of call reluctance. There's the not knowing what to do, when to do it, how to do it, what to say, kind of a syntax issue.
Mhm.
Like, if you call enough and do what you need to do, if you're willing to get on the phone, it'll go away. But the call reluctance that we're referring to here is really emotionally based call reluctance, where, people aren't able to do what you're able to do, and they're not able to get back to, it's too early, it's too late. They don't want to talk to me, that sort of that, self-defeating talk, self-talk, and
Yeah.
feelings that go along with it. And so those are the folks that really need to dig deep and resolve the challenges that have been created in their life. And it all relates to basically what happened in their life between the time they were born and their age of 12. I mean, you're mostly who you're going to be by 7, and your belief systems about who you are and what you can do pretty much cemented by the time you're 12. So,
Yeah.
not that you can't change them, but by the age of 12, we're not given any tools on how to rearrange the thoughts and belief systems in our head, and to decide what to let in and not let in, and what to let out. So, and that's really where the rubber meets the road on that, though.
Yeah. Now, would you say that maybe this is one of the biggest challenges that agents are facing right now? I know we have a
Yep.
changing market, right? And
Mhm.
buyers and sellers are definitely a challenge. But I think, wouldn't you agree that maybe making the calls is actually the biggest challenge of everything that agents are facing?
Yeah. So statistically speaking, 80% of new salespeople have call reluctance. 40% of existing, like, seasoned salespeople have call reluctance. And 59% of all salespeople have a very strong need to be liked, which prevents them from prospecting for that fear of rejection, fear of not being accepted, fear of not being approved. Okay. And look, here's the thing. It's cool to want to be accepted. You know what I'm saying? Our society started in tribes and groups. Biblically speaking, God wants us to get together and with each other and worship him. That's perfectly normal to want to be liked. Okay. And, but when it gets to a need to be liked, where your value and who you see yourself as, and what you accomplish, and what you bring to the table, when it's deeply rooted in that, and there's a chance that somebody could, not accept that from you, or not think it's good, or reject you, that's when people get off the train. So roughly 2 out of 3 people, a little less than 2 out of every 3 salespeople, has some sort of reluctance as it relates to sales that's impeding their progress.
Yeah, and I totally get that. I see it all the time, and I hear all the excuses, and that's why I recognize my own excuses, and I think that's what people I feel like people just need to be more aware, right? So that they can recognize when they're coming up with these excuses, and then they can nip that in the bud and say, okay, you know what, just make the call. So how would you advise professionals to overcome the call reluctance and the emotional blocks that they're having? I know you have a course, but
Yeah.
it's just a
Yeah.
few
I'll give you
words,
the details. Yeah, that wasn't going to be my answer. Well, take my course. That's course. Here's the
Yeah.
short answer. Just take my course. 1-800
Yeah.
call Wally. No, so great question. My course really it revolves around some pretty, specific activities. It's kind of 5 steps I've broken it down to. The first one is, becoming aware, like becoming globally aware of where it came from, right?
Mhm.
There's trauma, there's bullying, there's belief systems we created ourselves, and then there's influences from adult figures like parents and leaders in our life, and things, sexual, emotional, physical abuse, bullying, making decisions about who you think you are. For instance, I grew up poor. I could see my clothes were different. I mean, I still remember my lunches being different from the other kids. I still remember today those cowtails, like the cowtail candies. I'm saying, like, kids had
Uh-huh.
those all the time, and my mom's like, we can't afford those, and I'm like, okay, so, and as a result of that, I felt different. I felt like I stood out. And then just I felt like I wasn't as worthy because I would grow up in New Hampshire. Kids would go skiing, vacation, like we never did any of that. So I created this belief system around not being good enough, and it really affected how I treated money, for the first 50 years of my life. And then,
Yeah.
really it's just a matter of figuring out, okay, like, where does this come from? And I give people a real simple activity. I tell them to take two note cards, or if you're a perfectionist, you can take two pieces of paper. I don't care. Just get it down, gum wrappers, cocktail napkins, and just very simple question. What is that's causing me to have call reluctance, or what is causing my procrastination, or what is causing my perfectionism, and really just going through and letting your subconscious bring all that back to the surface,
Yeah.
right? We remember everything we've ever tasted, seen, touched, smelled, or heard. Problem is it's stacked like a big sandwich. And so, but our subconscious is going to bring that up. Okay, and so the first thing is to become aware. I mean, you would never go to the doctor and say, "Hey, I've got a headache," and the doctor would say, "Okay, lay down, we're going to operate," right? Doctor's gonna be like, "Okay, is it inside? Is it outside? Is it throbbing? Is, what I'm saying?" And so
Yeah.
we've got to identify the source, and then really the reason we're doing that is because we need to understand the emotions that come up when that happens, right? T. Harv Eker calls it TFAR: thoughts, feelings, actions, results.
Hmm.
Triggered, we get a thought. There's an emotion that comes up, and then that emotion leads to an action or an inaction, and then we get a result. But for most of us, because we've gotten so good at it, we go trigger, I'm going to skip right over that emotion. I'm going to go right to action or inaction, and most of the time I get a result I don't want. So
Yeah.
the thing is let's feel that emotion so we can deal with it rather than pushing it down. Okay,
Yeah.
which comes to the next step, which is basically situational awareness, define, identify, and then mindfulness. So now I have identified what causes these issues. I identify what the emotions feel like. And now every time those emotions come up, I've got to be like, okay, what is that? That's anxiety. Where's that coming from? Okay, well, I realize that, my parents fought all the time when I was a kid, and my parents beat me, what I'm saying? And so, not beat me all the time, but we definitely, if there was something nearby you could get hit with, a slipper, a spoon, remote control, whatever. So, and then from there, it's like, okay, I'm just going to let this feeling come up, and then I'm going to become mindful, which is I'm just going to focus on the here and now and focus on my breathing. I like square breathing, right? That's a good strategy. Box breathing, they call it, which is in for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, out for a 4 count, hold for a 4 count, and that regulates your body, and
Hmm.
that gets you out of fight or flight and back into rest and digest. And then you just focus on being mindful, and eventually that feeling will pass. The good thing is that when you do that long enough, through the miracle of neuroplasticity, you can actually train your brain to do the work for you and not even let that stuff disrupt you. So it's pretty cool. Step three is to rewire your brain, right? We've been saying crappy stuff to ourselves our whole life, right? We've been not believing in ourselves. We've got all these things that were programmed or coded, as Dr. Don Wood would say, that are wrong, that we've been reinforcing. And now we're an adult and we have this negative, bad coding. So, got to recode. We've got to rewire. I'm a big fan of Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning. So, which is important. And step four is, really identifying what we want in life. Unfortunately, Paul, what happens is we get so caught up in running from pain, running from what we're looking for, that we can't look forward to something. And so
Yeah.
most of us really don't spend a lot of time thinking what we want, either because we're too busy focused on the pain and running away, or we just don't believe that the future is possible. So we really spend time thinking about that. And then the last thing, step five, is really let's focus on your why. People have a lot of trouble with their why because of that, for that same reason, because they're so focused on just not feeling pain or trying to avoid the pain, and there's so much blockage in there from all this crap that's collected over the last several years, whatever it is. And so it's not giving them the power, the belief system, to really figure out what their why is.
Yeah.
And so, and then by going through that process, you can clean all that up and start, doing what you need to do on a day over day, week over week, month over month basis, and you just don't think about it.
Yeah, I talk about whys all the time, and success, and what the meaning of success is to people, because that meaning is different. And so when the meaning is different, you know, the reason for that level of success is going to be unique to yourself. And you have to dig deeper to get a good understanding of, well, why is it that you want that?
Mhm.
What's driving you? And it's that desire, that, it's like that burning desire, that is going to create the passion, make you do what you need to do
Mhm.
to get that, achieve that success. And I think that that's so important. But it all starts up here. And as you mentioned, the rewiring, I think people don't understand how to rewire themselves, and it does take a little bit of work and some effort, but that
Mhm.
it can be done. You can change the way that you're thinking.
It's interesting. I mean, we're using the same strategy that got us here today is the
Hmm.
same strategy you're going to use to rewire your brain, right? It is, because it's just a matter of being intentional about what goes in and what gets out. The other thing is, your brain thinks it's in charge because we've let it be in charge, but it's really not
Yeah,
in charge. We're in charge. And that's why we've got to go ahead and go through the process of rewiring our brain and forcing our brain to realize that, hey, all this negative programming and coding you have is not the way it's supposed to be. So we're going to change that. And your brain's going to fight you. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
It takes a little while. And most people don't give it the time. But if you were to work on your mindfulness pretty consistently, it's going to take a couple of weeks for it really to cement, at least 7, 8 days for you to start noticing a difference. So you've got a lot of people, it's a 30, 40, 50 year ball of yarn. They're unraveling. So you
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. Well, like I said, I'm 64, and I actually started working on myself seriously about 40, like right around the time I got into real estate. And it's a continuous effort. I mean, I haven't stopped since I started. It's like I'm ever changing, and just constantly growing with the changes around me. Because if we don't change and adapt to those changes, we're gonna be left behind. So
I love Zig Ziglar said this. I love it. He says, working on yourself and working on your motivation. He says, it's like bathing. We recommend you do it every day.
yeah. Absolutely, absolutely, and it makes all the difference in the world, because it's just those incremental steps that are going to get you where you want to be. And
Right on.
sometimes, it's like we might have that goal where we want to be, but sometimes life throws some other things at you that could end up
Mhm.
in a whole nother place you didn't expect, but is much better than where you were going in the first place,
Yeah. Yeah.
because you just did all the right things day in and day out, that kind of picked up the pieces, and the universe just ended up delivering you something much better.
Right. Rolling Stones. You can't always get what you want, but sometimes you get what you need. So
Absolutely. Yeah. Firm believer. Yeah.
I think it
Yeah.
just aged both of us on that one. So that's good. Um,
So can you share a success story of how your coaching has significantly impacted a real estate agent's career?
yeah, I mean, I've had the good fortune of working with some really, really good agents across the country. Jeff Cook, Brett Jennings, Chris Waters. And I've learned a lot from them too. But I work with those folks, a lot of them, kind of in the early stages of their career through the Great Recession, and really help them build a solid foundation to get to where they were, wanting to be. And I helped some of those folks make their first million in real estate. So it was pretty cool. You know what I'm saying? So um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, it's just, and I learned a lot from my mentor, learned a lot from, the guys over at NAEA when I worked with them, Jay and Mike, we talked about that. It's awesome when you can talk to somebody and help them get a foundation put in place in their business, and, help them track and help them build an organization, and where they then take it and run with it and build it, what I'm saying, and turn it into something amazing and fantastic, you know,
Yeah.
but I've definitely, from my perspective, what I've done for a lot of folks is really help them just get all their stuff lined up, and then help them make really good decisions on a day over day, week over week, month over month basis about how to build their business, who to hire, when to hire, how much money to spend on something, tracking your budget, tracking your numbers, and making sure that you're doing the daily activities that move the needle, one of which is prospecting.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting too, as we talk about some of these successful people, and some of those names I recognize, and I know fairly well. And one of the things that I think that agents get into this, they're, and I've in recruiting many agents over the years as a
Mhm.
broker, you talk to, what's your goal and how much money you want to make. And, people coming in, it's like, yeah, I got to make six figures, and they expect that in their first year. And they think that a lot of these people are overnight success stories when the reality is that it's not. It
Very
takes
close.
time
Mhm.
to build and develop and to grow. And yes, occasionally there's that rare overnight success story where somebody in their first year, they hit that $100,000 income mark, and that's great. But there's a lot of other circumstances that might have been a part of that, really impacted their business. But you can make a lot of money in this business, but you've got to give it time to develop. You can become a seven-figure real estate agent, but that's not going to happen overnight. It's going to just take some time. So your first step is like, your first year, maybe you goal for $50,000, right? And
Mhm.
if you see you're going to make 50 grand in income, it's like, well, raise that level of goal and then, shoot for the 100,000. And then once you get to the 100, shoot for 150 or shoot for 200. You do it in the incremental steps. And I think people can't envision that. They want the big numbers, and they want it, and then they get disappointed when they don't
Yeah,
achieve it.
very good point. And I think this is attributed to Bill Gates, but it could be somebody else. But people overestimate what they can do in a year and they underestimate what they can do in 10 years. I think a lot of us, we set ourselves up for failure by having unreasonable expectations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very true. That's very true.
People set goals of making $1 million in a year and they've never even made $100,000 in a year.
Yeah,
Gotta get
right.
I get to 100,000 before you get to a million. So
Yeah.
work your way there, work your way there, so I think that's
Well,
part of the challenge. And then they're not willing to back it with the effort and the activity that needs to happen to make it a reality. You know what I'm saying? Like, to make $1 million in real estate, or even just make six figures in real estate, you've got to become a different person than you currently are, right? The
yeah,
person you are is not the person you're going to need to be to make 100,000, to make a 500,000, to make whatever it is. Does that make sense? And
yeah, absolutely.
that requires a lot of internal work.
Yeah, it does. And having a good mentor helps too.
So I've heard.
A lot of agents, I mean, I try to pair people up. It's like, hey, talk to these people, see about, if they want to be your mentor because you need a mentor. And they're like, oh, no, I don't need a mentor. I'll just, do it my way. And I'm like, man,
Yeah.
and I was always happy to pay for a mentor. When I got in this business, I had a mentor. I shared my first three transactions, and I'll tell you what, never looked back, and would do it again. And I've paid many mentors over the years for different educations, and it's well worth it. So that's how you can get from A to B much faster than if you try to do everything on your own. So I want to touch upon your book real quick. What are some key insights from your book, Tragic Hero? Do you find it most relevant for real estate professionals?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think we've all, and thank you for mentioning it, by the way. We've all gone through some crap. We all have a story, right? We all have things that have impacted us over the period of our life. And unfortunately, most of us just leave it unchecked. And, the longer you leave issues that need to be resolved unchecked, the worse it gets, right? I mean, I was basically suicidal by the time, I was trying to think here in 1951, because I had not dealt with anything. And I was addicted to sex and pornography and money and food. I had blown $5 million, unfaithful to my wife. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I spent a year in federal prison on mail fraud, working with somebody who, and it's my fault. I was there. I made the decision to be there, but, lied on $15 million worth of mortgages. And, I mean, I basically screwed up everything in my life because I was not paying attention to what needed to be worked on,
Yeah,
and I literally hit rock bottom. And so, and the thing is you hear that definition of insanity all the time, right? Doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. But the one thing they don't tell you is that every day you don't take care of something, it gets worse, right?
yeah,
And so, scientifically, medically, even, they're like, hey, unresolved issues eventually will lead to anxiety, severe anxiety, depression, and even PTSD, and in some cases suicide, because we leave things unattended to. And that's like, and that's why you see a lot of real estate agents, they'll have a great year in 2020 and 2021, they'll sell 20 houses. They're like, yay, I can do this. And then all of a sudden 2022 and 2023 come and they sell six
yeah,
houses and they can't figure out why. You know what I'm saying? The reason why is because You didn't have to do anything in those time frames to during that time, the first time frame to sell a house. Now you got to do what you need to do to sell a house. And unfortunately, they're not equipped from a skill set standpoint or a mindset standpoint, and they
Yeah.
still have all these limiting beliefs and whatnot that keep them from moving forward. The book really is about just, I call it getting radical, you know,
Hmm.
becoming radically honest with yourself and saying, okay, like this is what's not working. And,
Yeah.
and this is what I'm not doing well. And it doesn't make me a bad person. And, but I do need to attend to these things and being honest with yourself and then becoming radically transparent and letting the people in your life, and being transparent with what you did wrong and accepting responsibility for it and just letting people know that, hey, I'm really going to take care of this, and then taking, radical responsibility for things, radical action, and really just getting after fixing what's not working. Okay. It's not a position of being broken. It's more of a position of fixing what's not working optimally, right? Like broken, in
Right.
my opinion, means it's not working, right?
Yeah.
Like it's completely kaput. Like there's no, it's right. It's not that so much that we're broken. It's just that we're not working optimally. I like to say under construction. We're kind of under
Yeah. Yeah.
construction, right? So it's like part personal development, part memoir.
Yeah, sounds intriguing and sounds like, yeah, you've
Yeah.
been through quite a bit. And that's what
Mhm.
people don't understand. And I share my experiences and people are like, well, you've done all this stuff wrong. Why should I take any advice from you? It's because I did do things wrong, but I learned from it, right? So you're able to teach so much of what you learned from those mistakes and those things that you did that you can help prevent others from falling into that same trap.
The
Uh,
first four words of my book, not the introduction, it says I'm not a victim, right?
there you go. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, look, we've all been a victim in our life at one point or another. Something's happened to us that we didn't ask for, that we weren't even trying to, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're sitting in your car and you're parked and somebody is sitting behind you and or they're driving and not paying attention, they slam into you and you get hurt like this, I mean, yeah, you made the decision to be there to drive, but you weren't expecting somebody to come and hit you and take your life in another direction, right? But
Yeah.
the thing is do you stay there in victimhood and say, oh, woe is me, look what happened to me? Or you say, okay, you know what? This happened. Here's where I am. What do I need to do to make this better? Okay.
Yeah.
And that's really what it's all about is making the decision to do the things you need to do to become the person that you want to be, we're meant to be, so you can create a great life for yourself and your family.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds good. Sounds good. So tell me your insights. How do you foresee the landscape of real estate sales evolving and what skills should agents develop now to stay ahead?
It's interesting. Back in 1995, the internet, like I think it was April of 95, like the internet formally was released to the public. They're like, hey, pretty soon you're never going to go have to meet anybody. You can buy everything online. Businesses are going to close, tons of them. You're not going to have to go to a car dealership. And so I'm like, yeah, some of that happened. There were some industries that got squashed by the internet for sure, right?
Yeah.
Online presence is, insurance, legal, travel, what I'm saying. But fact of the matter is that, you still need, you don't need a real estate agent, but, they're still very valuable in the market. And the people that don't use a real estate agent more often than not get squashed. Something bad happens,
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
not now, down the road, right? So, the fact that people still choose to work with real estate agents is proof positive to me that agents, I think, should be here for ever until, unless something radically changes, and so the other thing, people are like, oh, AI is going to replace all these real estate agents. And, nope.
Yeah.
And it's going to help people who are doing well do even better. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And it's going to
Mhm.
help with marketing and advertising, and it's going to help with brand building and maintaining relationships with people, right? But at the end of the day, you still have to be able to get somebody to move that last 5 yards to get into the end zone, right? You still have got to compel
Right.
somebody to meet with you. So, and then we have this lawsuit went through, and there's, pending action that can be taking place. And what I see here is more than anything, will probably just be more paperwork. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
When I
Mhm.
got into the business, the purchase and sales agreement was I think 2 pages,
Yeah.
pages, and now it's a book.
Carbon copied. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, and so right, but now it's a book. So I think we will see some changes. I think we'll see how people get paid and notifications and understandings of what goes where. I think that's more of what we'll see. I still think, buyers are going to need to buy a house, and here's the thing, like, and I think we have to think about this, is like, there's a ridiculous number of industries that benefit when a home sells, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Hmm.
Tons of them. And so whoever is working on this at the highest level needs to realize that there's a huge butterfly effect from the real estate industry. And if for some reason, you know, buyer agency goes away and buyers can't work with a buyer agent to buy a home, we're going back to this to anything prior to 1992, which is where you had to work with listing agent, and that got hairy itself. So I think agents are still going to need to be able to get on the phone. You're still
Yeah.
going to need to demonstrate value. I think this is going to require agents to get people signed to either buyer agency or listing agency before they do something with them, just to protect their interest and to protect their clients and to be able to justify their fee. I think it's just going to make everybody tighten up their game. And the people who have been kind of flying by the seat of their pants and are just running around and just doing things all willy-nilly, I think those people are finally going to, either have to, put up or shut up. So since 2012, with the exception of, I'll say maybe it was 11 and then 13, basically since 2012 and on, we've sold just about 5 million plus homes a year. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
this will be the first year since 2012. So 11 years later where we don't sell 5 million homes. Okay. And, a lot of that was created by what happened with COVID. I'm saying we're
Yeah.
still feeling the effects of that. So, but the whole point is that we're always going to sell houses. There's always going to be houses to be sold, right? We're going to sell 4.3 million resales this year, plus another, I don't know, 1.6 new construction homes, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And so what's that, 6 million homes, which is fairly standard, and, not all of them are double enders, but, there's technically 12 million sides to that.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So there's always going to be opportunity out there. There's always going to be homes to sell. You've just got to, we got this from COVID too. You've got to pivot, as
Hmm.
the market changes, so do you. And so people are going to have to be able to become more skilled at selling, more skilled at making phone calls, more skilled at getting people to sign paperwork, more skilled at getting people to work with them. You know what I'm saying? I think that's what all of what's coming down the pike is skill sets need to be improved, and becoming an expert is more and more important than it ever has been.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
In a nutshell, I mean, it's just, you gotta adapt. You gotta adapt to it and do it through learning and sharpening the axe with your skills. And I think that's great advice. So in your opinion, how important is personal development in achieving success in sales?
And mandatory,
Yeah.
right? You know, I
Hmm.
mean, I mean, you can go to Jim Rohn, Zig Ziglar, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're never gonna out earn your level of personal development, you know?
When I was commuting, I used to I refer to my car as the university on wheels because I would always be
Mhm.
listening to CDs from all these guys and just depending on what my day was ahead of me, I would I'm going to be negotiating. I'm like listening to somebody talking about negotiations, talking about sales. I'm listening to somebody on sales, and it's just getting yourself in that right mindset for the day.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
so
I
yeah,
don't, yeah,
personal.
I don't drive as much these days, so I
Yeah,
listen on my phone and stuff.
yeah.
Driving's always been hard for me. My mind starts to wander, and I'm like, oh, I'm listening to an audio. So it's a skill
Hmm.
set in my belief. You got to work on it. But yeah, I mean, you need at least 20 minutes a day of some good personal development, whether it's a book, an audio, a video, or something like that. Minimum 20 minutes. They say CEOs read at least 4 to 6 books a month. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
yeah. And what I found for me, because I am easily distracted, just like most real estate agents, I actually find that what works is if I'm listening to Audible and I'm reading the hard paperback book with at the same time. So I'm reading it and listening, and that seems to be able to keep my attention focused
Mhm.
on the book. So just a suggestion for anybody out
Oh,
there
it's
that,
great.
that
I think that's great.
might
Yeah,
struggle.
the more of
You
your
know.
senses, the more of senses you can involve, the stickier whatever you're involved with becomes.
Yeah, yeah. And then finally, what advice would you give to new real estate agents that are just starting out in their careers?
Go to a different industry. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. Fun fact: the number of realtors in the United States actually grew by a little over 6,000 between October and November, which I thought was
Wow.
crazy. Yeah, and I went and did the
Yeah.
math. 60,000 realtors did not leave the industry in the first 2 months of the year. That was, I don't know who came up with that silly statistic. It was like half of that. And
See, I thought that came from NAR, but
I don't know where they got the data. I went
yeah.
Because like if you go look at NAR's numbers, you don't see 60,000 realtors leaving the business. Now, if they were taking people who didn't have, weren't realtors, but I went and looked at the NAR. I mean, I look at the NAR data once a month. I'm saying, so, in October, we're at 1.566 million. And then in November, we're at 1.572. So
Okay.
anyway, yeah, it's interesting. If you look at any challenging economy in history, that's when some of the most prolific businesses were created, right? That's when people who are like, what, F this, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm not working a job. I'm going to I'm going to fulfill my own destiny, And
Yeah.
so anyway, yeah. So, right. So, because that pain creates the leverage to move, right? So, but anyway, to the point of your question, I think, number one, don't get in the business unless you have 4 months of expenses tucked away that'll give you a full sales cycle to survive.
Yeah.
Okay. I think people get in thinking they're going to make things happen a lot faster than they will. And, the real estate industry giveth and it also taketh away. And
Mhm.
deals stay together. Sometimes they stay together, they fall apart. Put 4 months of business expenses away, minimum, put one sales cycle away so that you have the opportunity to not touch all that money. You'll likely close something sooner if you get with the right organization, but at least 4 months. The second thing is be prepared to make a ridiculous amount of phone calls. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're gonna get hit up by every lead generation platform on the face of the planet. You're gonna get hit up by social media people. Like, that's all well and good. You need leads, but you need to pick up the phone and call these people. Okay. It's at the end of the day, that's what's going to happen. You can you can text people, you can email people, you can send them handwritten notes. Those are all nice, but they're not going to get you business. You've got to be willing to make, at least in the very beginning, probably 15, 20 contacts a day.
Yeah.
Okay, which with some of the stopgaps that some of these cell phone companies are putting into place, I mean, we're seeing it sometimes is somewhere between 19 and 22 contact attempts to get in touch with somebody, which is somewhere around three times what it was in 2007 and 8. So, number three, you really have to work on your personal development. You absolutely 100% need to continue working your personal development. And lastly, and I think this is important, join a team. Join an organization. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Go someplace where you can get training, where you can get leads, where you can get support, where you can learn from somebody else. And even though you're giving up a larger portion of your commission, you're getting the direction, the support, the training, and what you need. And then you're not laying out as much of your cash up front.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes people are too focused on that percentage of commission that
Mhm.
they got to put in their pocket, and they've got to be able to see the value
Mhm.
of what they do give up of their commission. That's going to help them make even more money.
Yeah, which explains why the average realtor under I want to say 8 years in the business, was only making $57,000 a year.
Yeah.
Go work at a bank and make that and have 1/3 of the stress, 1/10 of the stress,
Right. Right. And they'll have more time to yourself too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. And
yeah.
after expenses and stuff like that, what is that really? I mean, they every year, the last 2 years or 3 years, if you go to the NAR site, the number one expense for realtors in the country is their car. And they have it
Yeah.
listed somewhere around $1,500 for, a month.
Yeah.
I mean, that's stupid.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So listen, Wally, this has been fantastic. I can't thank you
Yeah,
enough
thank
for
you. Mhm.
coming on here today. So if somebody wants to reach out to you, what's the best way for them to find you?
I'm on all the social media platforms, not all of them, but mainly on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Wally Bressler. And also my site, triggersalessystem.com. Actually, if you were intrigued by anything today, or if you have call reluctance and you'd like to find out, you can schedule the time with me at no cost. If you go to triggersalessystem.com, you can grab time on my calendar, or you can email me, Wally at triggersalessystem.com.
All right. And what we'll do is we'll put all that information in the comments below so that
Thank you.
as people watch this video, they want to get more information. It'll be right there as well, and they can reach out
Thank you, sir.
and maybe get some one-on-one time with you and make a strong impact in their business in a positive way.
Yes, sir.
So,
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.